guys, I'm Anna.
And I'm Brian.
And we are
Those Annoying Vegans.
And we have Mike the Vegan with us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mike's in town for the San Diego VegFest, so we thought we'd do a little mukbanging and chatting. What are you eating, Mike?
I am eating a yellow curry tofu with some delicious brown rice. Sort of like a darker reddish kind of brown rice. I don't know what they did to it, but it looks super good. It's actually my favorite type of brown rice preparation. I'm loving it already, and I haven't even tried it.
I have the same brown rice Mike does, and I think this one's called the spicy tofu curry. If I'm not mistaken, it's got broccoli, bok choy, carrots, mushrooms, all sorts of yummy things.
And I'm rocking a little pad see-ew with some soy pepper steak. I got cauliflower, broccoli, kale, carrots, all sorts of good stuff, and I've got a side salad.
Had to use just like fat noodles.
Yeah,
right?
Big, flat, fat noodles. Oh, and of course, Thai iced tea. I love Thai iced tea. So let's enjoy.
Nom. I'm just going to make as many annoying eating sounds as possible.
That's all mukbang's about that now.
That's what the kids are into.
The mukbanging, yeah. So Mike, your channel focuses on science, health. Your viewers know that.
Yeah. Yep. I went vegan from the health information. I got handed the information basically on all the disease reversal and stuff like that. And so I selfishly went vegan for my own body. And then I was able to lift off the meat goggles, as I always say, and actually see what the animal agriculture industry was objectively looking at it instead of like denying what was happening because I was contributing to it. And so then it became about the animals too, and I have an environmental background. So that was just an obvious thing for me the whole time. But yeah, it started with health for me. And so I think that's how my channel became about health, because that's the information that turned me vegan initially. And so I find it super compelling to hear. And so that's just how it organically happened. I do obviously do videos about other stuff like the environment and animals, but people just tend to watch the health ones more. And so I make more of those, and it's just kind of naturally happened that way.
How long has it been now?
A year and a half, a year and something. I don't know. I haven't actually looked. Yeah.
Oh.
Longer than I thought, but not that long.
I went vegetarian first. I was vegetarian for about 6 years. And then we both went vegan. You weren't even vegetarian. You just went vegan.
I was eating steak and chicken wings and pizza and all that stuff.
About, what's that, 2.5 years ago?
Something like that, yeah. Winter 2015, I think we decided to cut out the eggs and the cheese.
I initially went vegan for the ethics. I was eating meat and loving animals. Came across Earthlings completely by chance. I didn't even know what veganism was because I had just moved to LA. I said, well, I guess I'm not going to eat meat anymore. Okay. And then as time went on, I started learning more about, there's actually a culture around this.
Yeah, the first documentary that I remember having an impact on me was actually Cowspiracy, which I know is mostly environment-based.
Were you vegan when you watched it?
No.
Okay.
No. Full-on meat eater at that point. It was like when we first started dating.
Is environment your main motivation then, or was it?
It's not anymore.
But
I
was
remember
it initially?
Initially, I was like,
Okay.
oh my goodness, all this land, all this rainforest, all these carbon emissions, all this destruction to the planet just for some steak and hamburgers. I remember that took me aback at first and made me kind of go like, oh, wow. Especially living in LA, we've been here for many years now. It's all about like water conservation and recycling and save the environment.
Take shorter showers.
Turn your
plant
thermostat
succulents.
to 78 degrees, like all these things that I don't think even touch the environmental benefits of going vegan.
Totally. So we have a really interesting situation here. In terms of the first motivation for us to go vegan, we have a health person, an ethical person, and an environmental person. So we have the full gambit here, the triforce of veganism.
That's right. So that begs the question, what's the right way to be vegan?
Just be vegan.
Yeah, being vegan is right. Obviously, there are ways to go vegan that are wrong for your health, and that is all about why vegans fail. And a lot of that is just going vegan and just removing things and not replacing basically calorie sources, not eating enough, and just feeling like crap and not having energy when you can easily eat enough and feel great and get all the stuff you need. So that's kind of the main reason vegans fail right there. Or getting too junky. You can either go too junky or too restrictive, obviously, like that couple that just fed their baby oat milk, which is just not. That's just ridiculous. And of course, eating disorders under the guise of veganism, that's a wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
for sure. And then going so junky that you're like omega-3 to omega-6 ratio is deadly.
Processed vegan foods that are loaded with oils.
Totally, exactly, yeah. Some people just don't even eat whole plant foods that are vegan nearly as much as they should.
I always feel like balance is the best way, as long as you're eating your grains, your fruits, your veggies, your nuts, your seeds.
It's funny too because a lot of omnivores will use that same justification, like it's all about balance. It's all about moderation, right?
Totally.
But it is strange that there are these like sub movements that want to make a vegan diet very extreme or restrictive in and of itself, when my experience is like it's totally not. Like you just take out the meat and then you replace it with something else.
And I actually get accused of that too. I mean, there's people out there like Durian Rider, for example, is like Mike promotes an orthorexic vegan diet, or She Who Shall Not Be Named, who says that I only promote a chia seed based elitist, alienating vegan diet, just because I use chia seeds as an example of how you can get omega-3s, which is ridiculous because I always putting flax and stuff too. Obviously, I think a whole food vegan diet is not too restrictive. And I always say eat on, a spectrum. Like if you're trying to reverse a disease, our studies show you need to do a whole food vegan diet to unclog your arteries super rapidly. And you need to do that to get the best results with reversing diabetes and stuff like that. If you don't have a disease, you're feeling pretty good. You can choose where you are, how many processed foods you want to include. And I think that's the message that often gets lost.
It's a process. That's kind of the beauty of these 3 different journeys. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody gets introduced to veganism a different way. I think I started more with the processed foods, like trying to replace the meats, thinking that I needed to. But in fact, you don't need to. Eventually, we've moved more towards a whole food plant-based diet. We've removed oil from our diet at home with the occasional popcorn. We just do our best, and we felt great. We both lost weight.
And speaking of the mock meats, I think, well, you don't require them, like you say. Some people kind of emotionally require them to transition.
Yeah.
And so I'm always like, yeah, go for it. But basically it's including isolated protein and oil, or like isolated protein and oil and sugar combined together in most situations. That's what mock meats are.
It wasn't until I gave up the oil and the processed foods that I saw an improvement in my triglycerides and cholesterol, actually.
Totally. And same with my acne. I mean, when I stopped cooking with oil, because, obviously you go out to a restaurant, you still eat oil. When I stopped cooking with oil, my face cleared up by probably like 80%.
I had acne. It was not on my face as much. I had what's known as the backney. Butt-knee. That's a new one. I'd have these red dots.
When
Other
you
people
stopped
can't see
eating
it.
dairy, it completely reduced. And
Dairy
we were
cleared
like,
it up.
what could it be? You still have some.
Yeah. And then we stopped cooking with oil. So we used to saute veggies in oil or anything, make soups with oil, like just load it up with oil because it comes from a vegetable.
Totally.
So it's fine.
Totally.
You'll have people come in and say, oh, well, the Mediterranean diet, they use olive oil.
Yeah.
But
and they eat a lot of fish too, so fish
think-
must be healthy.
But I think what Dr. Clapper said,
And
right,
wine.
was that despite the oil, they still consume way more fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds than the standard American diet.
And less meat, which offsets it enough to make it healthy when you look at it from like a population perspective, I
Totally.
guess.
Yeah, it's like comparing a population that smokes to another population that smokes less. It's like obviously the person that smokes less is going to do better.
So the reason we wanted to have this discussion, I guess, is because we have, and you can let us know if you have as well, have had comments saying that the only way to be vegan is for ethics, is for the animals. And I'd say we disagree with that notion.
Even I do.
We've said on our channel before that if you do go vegan for ethics, perhaps you're less likely to quit. Because
we tend to be more forgiving with our own health.
yeah,
Cheat days.
yeah.
Yeah, well, you treat yourself.
But like, what do you feel about the ethical debate? Is it superior?
It's completely hard to say. I mean, we have the study by Faunalytics, which put, in terms of major motivators that people went vegan, I believe they were floating right around 70% of people found health a major motivator. And it was actually 1 point less found animals to be a major motivator. But they're basically neck and neck, major motivators to go vegan. There is the argument that's made often that, oh, well, people that just go vegan for health, they are more likely to quit and fail. But then actually one of the main motivations for people to resume veganism from that study was health. So it's hard to make an argument as one. It's like one is superior than the other.
Right.
I think health right now is is performing better, with documentaries like What the Health. People are going vegan for health reasons left and right, but people are still doing it for animals as well. And so it's wrong to just say that health is just not a good reason. I mean, it's pretty obvious for me, especially where I view health also as almost a social justice issue. At least for me, it's ethical to let people know that there's a way to reverse these diseases, to prevent their child from having pretty advanced atherosclerosis by the time they're a teenager. But I always say to people that just go vegan for ethics, you can eat the crappiest food ever and you're gonna, die younger, and you're gonna do less good for the animals by dying younger and feeling like crap and looking like crap a lot of the times. Just, treat yourself better, and then you'll be able to help animals better. That's my sort of pitch to ethics-only vegans, to be like, just be a little healthier, please, I feel that people who are like, ethics is the only way, health is not worth it. It can be a bit alienating in a sense for people that are health, because that can close the door from them to then also becoming more ethical. I went from health to ethical and environmental. And so if I would just went health and people were like, that is not valiant enough of a way to go vegan, at the end of the day, it's saving just as many animals to not be eating them. And so
whatever inspires you to get there is the right way. We all start our journeys differently, but we've still learned about all the other facets of veganism, and that's the beauty about the movement, is there's so many different facets.
I mean, it opened the door for me to become an ethical vegan. I haven't seen Earthlings. I still haven't seen Earthlings. I've been told I don't need to see Earthlings since I'm already vegan. When you do catch those snippets, that footage that people have taken from factory farms, like the baby chicks being ground up, when they're days old, I remember that had a big impact on me. I just had no idea that was happening. Now that I'm vegan, it's like I'm open to go like, oh my gosh, I'm really glad I gave up eggs now, because that's horrible.
So how would you feel as somebody who first was sparked by the environmental aspect? If someone was like, hey, environmental is not a good enough reason to go vegan, ethics is the only way.
As you said, any reason is a good reason, because we're all on the same team and it helps the cause. A lot of the times that someone giving someone else the reason to do something that's personal to them, it can look badly upon the movement as a whole. Because you're telling me that I went vegan because I want to save the rainforest, for example. Yeah. That's not a good enough reason. Okay, well, I'm vegan, and it was because I wanted to save the rainforest. So,
and there are animals in the rainforest.
There are.
And you'd be putting out that candle,
Right.
Like people come to you and they're like, oh, this really inspired me. And you're like, that's not really the reason you should be. Then it's like, oh.
I also think, like, along the lines of TED Talks, right? The reason I think people like listening to people talk from the heart is because it's a personal experience. So if my personal experience is I do want to save animals, I do want to save our land on this planet because there's only so much of it, I do want to save the atmosphere, I want to prevent these carbon emissions, that's my experience, and I can maybe talk about that and maybe it'll click with somebody else. Because often the criticism is, hey, this is the right way to spread that message to influence others. Because usually I think when vegans talk to other vegans, we're not worried about like convincing you to go vegan because you already went vegan. It becomes a debate about like, well, what's the best way to get all these other non-vegans?
Totally advocacy. It's an advocacy debate.
To go vegan, and the only way is ethics, because that's the only way that'll stick, which isn't true.
Yeah. I think there's a major problem right now in terms of how effective the vegan movement is by fractionizing, by kind of becoming overly divided on things that aren't that different. Like I can have 99% the same beliefs as another vegan, and they might find that 1% as a reason to like hate me. Like my chia seed based diet is a reason to hate me. For example, Anna and I, there's going to be something we don't agree on. There's going to be something that every other human being on the earth doesn't agree with you. And so if you find that one point, you can find a way to hate every single person on the planet. And so I think a huge issue with the vegan movement that needs to be overcome and focused on is not hating somebody because you have one slight different view about veganism, being like, okay, we still agree on so many things, maybe work together.
We're a community. Like we're all teachers, everybody specializes. It's like a microcosm of a community. Some people are artists, they communicate veganism through artwork and making t-shirts, making pins. And then you have your teachers, your public speakers, you have your activists, you have people who are not so much into the activism but still cook a delicious vegan dinner for all their friends at home.
For example, our channel, it has a lot of veganized recipes because when we first went vegan, the one thing we kept hearing from everybody was like, oh, well, when you're vegan, you can't eat anything. I mean, you just can't eat anything. Like, I have to give up burgers, I have to give up steak, I have to give up chicken wings. And we were like, okay, what if we could replicate all of those flavors and you could still enjoy them? Because I got news for you. They mostly come from the vegan world anyway. Like
spices and stuff.
Yeah, spices, herbs, like meat really doesn't taste like anything. So we flavor it. We thought, at least initially, was, hey, this is a good way to get that message across. I'll make a tofu scramble instead of an egg scramble in the morning. And they do that, and they minimize their cholesterol intake, and they save a couple chicken lives while at it. That's great.
Yeah.
But it does seem like the ethics argument is definitely the loudest one. And I'm curious as to, like, why do you guys think it's so loud?
What do you mean by loud?
Well, like, you know, you see public demonstrations and there's people wearing masks, like holding TVs with factory farm footage, and they're going into Whole Foods with megaphones and yelling, and there's you know, people dressing up in nude bikinis with blood splattered over themselves and laying on the ground. Like, it's very loud, and you never see anyone go into a Whole Foods like, egg yolks have 187 milligrams of cholesterol. Sometimes more, sometimes higher. Could be higher. You never see that.
And it's amazing because if you think about it, the health argument can be, you know, there's a reason to be that passionate. You know, we have compelling. 600,000 people a year dying from heart disease, for example. And so it's like, you know, it's like, don't let your uncle die, you know, like things like that. It could make sense. But at the same time, I see what it is that can trigger for people where there are these animals that they don't have control over what they eat. They don't have control over what other people eat, which is them. Humans do have the choice, and animals are just complete victims. Although you can argue that there are children who are complete victims of, you know, dietary child abuse, and I have a video on that. But it's just this idea that they have absolutely no one to fight for them, and so people are just like, I gotta get out there, and I gotta do this for the animals, and I gotta get people to stop eating animals. And it's just so hard because psychologically, you know, you have people just put the wall up, reinforce their beliefs with a backfire effect. You know, the cognitive dissonance pulls in, and then they just slip to another fallacy of, you know, why they should keep supporting the animal agriculture industry.
I can't vouch for whether that is an effective way or not. Maybe it's had an effect on people. I don't know. Maybe had I been at a Trader Joe's when I first moved here and I didn't know anything about what veganism or any of this, maybe it would have inspired me to look into it or rethink my choices at the store. It has a different effect on different people.
Well, we know it works for some people. We know it turns other people off. We don't have any data on it, so I can't say, I can't stamp, yes, that's good, no, that's bad on it. So that's why I haven't done a video about it, is because I need to present data, and there's no data.
I think where it might be bad is, say, going into the Whole Foods and doing it. Whole Foods has some of the most extensive vegan options that we have available to us.
To play devil's advocate against that, I would argue that they aren't going to get rid of vegan options because there's some vegans yelling. It's hard because you got to call out their humane operations, which are actually just as brutal. I always say there's probably a more creative, more effective way to do it than just going and saying, screw you. More artistic ways that don't immediately trigger people, that can then get them to listen. That's what I'm always advocating for the animal rights organizations that do that.
Conversation, asking questions, that is one of the best methods.
That's a method that James Aspie uses a lot. It's that it's ask questions, don't yell, don't insult, don't accuse, but more like, well, why do you think it's okay to eat eggs or milk or whatever? And allow that person to respond, and then now you have a conversation. Totally. It's pretty amazing.
So important. And honestly, I've found, since we started watching Mike's videos a couple of years ago, we have become so well equipped on the health aspect, I feel, that it has only reinforced, because now we're prepared. We do find that health is generally the easiest way to access. It's like that keyhole. We hang out with friends who present a dilemma, and we're just like, have you thought about going vegan?
And here's another huge point, is that health is one of the main reasons that's used to not go vegan. You know, I'm not going to get enough animal protein, or I'm going to get sick, or this person got sick, or they're going to get, you know, super frail and skinny and weak. It's just not correct to say that health isn't effective when the health aspect and health advocacy and a lack of that is preventing people from going ethically vegan. So somebody might say, hey, I love the animals, I want to save all the animals, but man, I got to watch out for my own body. I hear that a lot. Like, if I go vegan, I'm going to die. To advocate against spreading the vegan health message on the grounds of animals is just completely nonsensical, especially when you think of it in terms of helping people feel like going vegan is healthy when they're doing it for the animals.
People who tend to argue that are the people who are super, super hopeful about resolving the issue from the ground up, inspiring people to somehow find compassion in their hearts, which I feel might be a little bit harder to do.
Yeah, in the same way that I can't just magically convince someone to like the music that I write. You probably can't just magically convince someone to start caring about cows and pigs and chickens if their whole life they've never cared about cows, pigs, or chickens. They may care about cows, pigs, and chickens because guess what? Everyone loves animals. That's what most people say. Your first instinct when you're handed a baby chicken or a baby pig is to cuddle it. So it's in us to care. Through sort of social conditioning, we've been told not to care. And now you have an adult who's eaten meat and dairy and eggs their whole life saying like, well, I'm not going to care.
Another problem with telling people to care, or the way that the ethical argument is presented, is condescending. Yes, the person is guilty of what they're being condescended for. They are guilty of eating animals and doing all these horrible things, funding the industry. But being told that is very rarely going to lead to them changing. Even Earthlings, the movie, isn't saying, hey, you're horrible, you're doing everything wrong, everything we're showing in this video, it's your fault. Like, it doesn't do that. That might be the single most effective tool that has turned people vegan for ethical reasons, that movie. Yeah. And so it's hard to say, like, how do you go out on the street and convince people to be vegan for animals? It's really hard. You have to be very, like, Socratic and very non-triggering. For most people, there's probably 1% of the people that would like to be slapped in the face to go vegan, but I don't think that's most people.
It's sort of been a form of abuse, the misinformation that we've been getting over the decades regarding our health. The milk commercials all of a sudden sprouted up again, guilt-tripping moms into if you're not feeding milk to your child, then you're probably not a very good mom. And now they're saying, now you can have milk with pizza, sushi.
Yeah, they're trying to pair milk with foods that traditionally aren't paired with milk.
Obviously, the industry is doing that in desperation because we all know that dairy consumption has been declining over the past couple of years, thanks to all the wonderful alternatives and to the fact that 75% or more of the world population is lactose intolerant.
AKA not a baby cow. That's code for lactose intolerant.
Yeah. Many of our friends are finding that out now in their 30s.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
I think one of the greatest things that going vegan did for me, and it might be true for other people, is taking health into my own hands. You know, I've learned so much more since going vegan about what I put into my body. And I don't know that the media has had the best interests of people in heart. And I work in the media. Like, I do voiceover work, no longer for fast food or for meat products, but when I did, I was a voice communicating what the agency wanted me to say about the product.
And what they could legally get away with saying. It's confusing because, for example, everyone knows that cigarettes are bad for you.
Yeah.
And that's just the common knowledge. Not that many people know that once you have 2 eggs, you're over your daily intake, according to government regulations, and no one's saying that. No one's saying like, whoa, keep your eggs to 1 a day or less. It's just not talked about.
What is talked about is what people want to hear, cholesterol doesn't actually matter. Don't even pay attention to the guidelines. Don't even worry about it. When industry and what people want to hear intersects, that is just really, it's a really dangerous combination, and it's really hard to fight that misinformation.
At least add a, like with alcohol, drink responsibly tagline. Eat responsibly.
You could put that on there. And like you said before, we feed carcinogenic foods to kids in schools. That's an ethical issue, in my opinion. They don't have any other choice but to eat whatever is served at the school. And if we're serving them eggs and processed meat, that's not good for them.
We know it's getting bad. That study that won the Volvo Science Award found unequivocal spinal disc degeneration in children 11 to 16. And that's from clogged back arteries. And dairy, because dairy is the main source of saturated fat. So that plays a huge role. It's obvious that these children are being totally abused.
There are schools now where they're only serving vegan lunches. James Cameron's kids go to a vegan school.
And then there's that whole idea that like, oh, vegan foods are expensive when they're not. What could be cheaper than rice and beans? Something else that we hear a lot is you can't trust sources because sources are always biased. So vegans talk about that a lot. Like, well, it's funded by the American Egg Board. They're biased. And then people will say, well, you know, Dr. Michael Greger and Dr. Michael Clapper and Dr. Neil Barnard and all these vegan doctors, are they biased too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's huge. Yeah. She who shall not be named always says that. The way I look at it is, did the bias come first or did it not come first? Like if you look at the Egg Board, they created those studies because they were trying to sell eggs. The people who, for example, like a Greger, he shares that information because it changed him. His grandmother had, you know, basically was sent to die for heart disease, and she went on a Pritikin diet, reversed that heart disease, lived way longer, and was able to be a part of, way bigger part of his life than she would have been. That's what created him. And that's what created these vegan doctors. It was because something real happened, and then they share information and create studies about that to show and share that it can do that, as opposed to a corporation with a bottom line saying, we need to make eggs look good. Let's design the study from the ground up. Let's cheat the system by bringing them up a higher altitude where cholesterol goes down and feed them eggs or stuff like that. And so the dairy industry does that too. The whole animal agriculture industry, they are biased because they're trying to make money on it. And yes, vegan doctors sometimes make money on it, but I'm telling you right now, they're not making a lot of money. And they are doing it because of how they were changed, not because of the other way around.
Yeah, some people actually care about other people.
Yeah, some people actually care about other people. It's a horrible bias. That horrible vegan agenda that we have. Evil
I never
vegan
got
agenda.
that. What's her agenda? What's with
don't
the
know.
vegan propaganda thing like that gets thrown around? Propaganda? Like, what am I selling?
Yeah, a vegan propaganda.
We're trying to
Or
get
we
people to spend less money on healthier food.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know
feel
what.
better.
I
And
think-
help animals. I don't know what the propaganda is.
I'd say 90% of the time that's a totally invalid concern. Everybody forgets about these corporations that are totally misconstruing the information and basically lying to you in their commercials. It's funny how you can be so much more mad about how a small portion of vegans are misconstruing things than basically the entire advertising arm of animal agriculture.
Overall, I think that the health argument only strengthens the vegan movement. It doesn't take anything away. We've even had people say like, well, even if we weren't designed to eat plants, veganism would still be the most ethical way of living. Well, if we were carnivores, that would be different. But the good news is we aren't carnivores.
Yeah.
We're herbivores.
Yeah.
So it does benefit us from a health standpoint, as well as benefit the animals, as well as benefit the environment. It's a win-win-win.
A lot of people might be going health vegan, and not ethical vegan, but would they have gone vegan at all? Maybe not, and that then opens up the avenue to becoming an ethical vegan. So advocating for vegan health does not ruin things, does not ruin the movement. It's huge. I believe it's also an ethical issue, and so health is great.
And so are the human rights component, the ethical component, the environmental component. It all works together.
So guys, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Mike the Vegan for being in our little mukbang discussion
Yeah,
video.
that was great. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you over. If you guys like this video, please click that thumbs up button down below. That really helps us out. And if you haven't already, subscribe.
And smack that notification bell. Otherwise, you might as well not subscribe. So.
We will bring you something new every week. Thank you so much to our patrons on Patreon. You guys make this channel possible. And we will see you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye.